I probably don't have to tell anyone in this room about the cost of a good higher education these days, do I? And that is why any great university such as Notre Dame must continually be looking at how to make itself a better place. And that's just not in what it teaches, but it's also in how it expands the minds and everything. And Notre Dame has had a program for that for some time. The subject is planning and continuous improvements in higher education. He was appointed Director of Undergraduate Studies in 2009. Would you please welcome Michael Mogavero. Michael?
Thank you very much. I stand here truly humbled, surrounded by so many people who make a difference. I feel that my accomplishments pale in comparison to those in this room whose achievements have truly made a positive impact on the world around us. But I have been fortunate to work with and be in the midst of some truly wonderful people in my career. I've been blessed to have a calling to the greatest profession in the world, and that is being a college professor. A career in higher education allows one to touch the lives of others in hopefully productive ways. It allows us to watch young people actuate their intellectual and their personal potential. Now, I should say I used to be an economist who migrated to the field of planning and continuous improvement. It began with when, a long time ago, I was a dean and a calling from my then president to provide leadership for the college planning process. Now, this was not at Notre Dame, this was at another institution. But like any planner, I began to collect data and information. After a year or two, I felt there's got to be a better way to do this than just to produce documents that all too often had the perception of being make work and would sit on the shelf gathering dust. Now, after some 20 years of working with many universities and many presidents, it's become readily apparent that these gifted and well-meaning administrators seem to experience the same detours on their way to success. The manifestation of this is that about 60 to 75% of university goals fail to achieve their objectives. Now, planning is a complicated process, and not one blueprint for doing it correct applies to all universities. But I've chronicled some of the major reasons why university plans sometimes fall short of their expectations. Now let me say that my experiences, and I'm relatively new to Notre Dame, my experiences and what I'm talking about here is not intended to apply to Notre Dame. This is primarily to the kinds of colleges and universities that I work with, which are mostly state schools or small private schools, but the same mistakes tend to appear over and over again. So, mistake number one, failing to build a campus community if a collegial environment does not already exist. Sometimes a new president will come in amidst tensions, mistrust. It becomes important, if you're going to build a plan that everyone is involved with, to change that culture, to establish faith and credibility in the eyes of the community. For if you won't, they won't become the engines of success. The great minds in the university exist in its faculty, in its staff, and in its students. A good democratic and inclusive planning process extracts that. It brings it together. But first and foremost, you have to have confidence. And if trust hasn't been established, it's just simply not going to work. Secondly, implementing your own vision without listening to the campus community. Coming in, saying, this is the way it's going to be. Without talking, without knowing its history, its culture, I'm going to take, for example, the best pre-professional school on Long Island and turn it into the Harvard of Long Island. An admirable goal, but enrollment in that university dropped almost 50% as a result because it was countercultural to the strengths of that university. Know who you are, what you are, and build upon the strengths of that university. Alternatively, some presidents, in terms of being impatient, and they've got trustees that want them to succeed, organize a committee with their vision and ask the committee to implement it. Okay. Once again, this appears as top-down management. It appears as one that's not inclusive. It appears as one that doesn't value all the contributions that the university has to offer. The plan will not have the energy and excitement behind it. It will not have the drivers who have all kinds of enthusiasm behind it to make that come to be. Thirdly, failing to realize that a solid planning process is institutional effectiveness. That becomes the goal, institutional effectiveness, okay? Where you look at both academic and non-academic programs, you communicate to the campus, and you have a continuous improvement process. Okay. Many presidents that come in might want to do one or two or three of those things separately, but not do it in a comprehensive manner and one which relates to one another. What's especially current is the fourth mistake that's occurring in higher education. It doesn't apply, again, especially to privates, but many state institutions right now, with this quest for accountability, become the slave of what I call intermediate measures of success. The goal of a higher educational institution, or one of the goals, and I think the paramount goal, is student achievement and student growth. Okay. But if you look, many institutions receive their funding on the basis of graduation rate, square foot usage, etc. Never is there a measure of student achievement or student growth. Sometimes you can lose sight of accomplishing your mission if you focus on intermediate indicators rather than those that are your penultimate objectives. Fifth, failing to have a planning and budgeting framework upon which to rely. I won't read all this, but one of very often a new administrator, a new president might do is, with this committee that he's put forth, ask that committee, what program should receive more? What should receive less? What should be steady state? I'm not asking you to name those. I'm asking you to tell me what the criteria are for evaluating programs. Which one should we invest more in? The same and less? And I've done this at a number of universities, and the answer is always the same. Invest more in quality. Now, the measures may differ among universities, but invest more in quality. Invest more in need and opportunity, what students want and the jobs that are available to them. Invest more if the activities are central to the mission of the university. Okay. And of course, be cognizant of cost. Okay, and for those of you who are in my class, this is economics. It's benefit-cost analysis and trying to get an idea of what those benefits are. Okay. I've seen cases where universities have gone through this and have had to make very difficult decisions. I'll make one quick example. A university had a daycare center, not daycare, I'm sorry, it was a K through 4 lab school that was losing several $1 million a year. Okay. And the president had to close the lab school. Okay. Well, you can imagine what's going to happen here. Television cameras are going to come in. They're going to focus in on the little kids and how terrible this is. Okay. This president survived it because what he did was go through this process. And he showed the campus community that, given the criteria that they had established, this was the program that was taking more resources away from the academic mission than any others. There was little criticism, and he survived it unscathed. Sixth mistake, failing to see that institutional effectiveness includes critical process reform. This is continuous improvement in the realm of continuous. It's a fun thing to do. It's a fun thing to do because you get stakeholders involved, and stakeholders identify processes, and they identify processes and the bottlenecks in these processes that slow things down. Okay. What you want to do with continuous improvement is to reduce cycle time, that is, make the process go quicker, and increase constituent satisfaction. Okay. In my experiences, people become very reluctant to do this at first. After a few years, people can't wait to get on board and on these teams because they really bring about effective change. So that's the critical improvement process. 7, when senior administrators fail to prioritize institutional well-being over their own personal goals. Okay. And I think we've all seen this, where there may be an administrator who puts themselves and their career above it. The reality is that your career will grow if the effectiveness of the institution go. You get branded as being someone who is part of a team that brought about success. So rally around that. Be a team player, and no matter what you do when you leave here. Number 8, strategic plans that fail lack conviction. Words to avoid: may, investigate, implement steps. I'll never forget when I was a young administrator, I sat in a table with the president and looking at a strategic plan, and it was filled with, we're going to investigate this, we'll look into this, we might do. The president slammed his fist on the desk and said, I want conviction. I want to know if we're going to do this or we're not going to do this. All this does is provide ways for you to hedge around doing something. So strategic plans need to have conviction. 9, failing to periodically inform the campus community of the efforts, successful or otherwise, which have been taken to achieve the organization's strategic initiatives. I never see better plannings and presidents that they say, here's what we're going to do in this academic year. And then as part of their annual report, they actually state, this is what we have done and what we've done, in accordance with the way in which the plan. It yields all kinds of increases in credibility. People know that the operation is transparent and they have much more faith and want to be a part of it. Number 10, failing to realize that times of financial exigency are exactly the times strategic planning process is critical to the organization. When financial times are tough, people say, well, why should we plan? Why should we dream? We're not going to be able to have the resources anyway. This is precisely the time to do it. It is because you want to mine, again, the institution for those ideas that will both transform the institution and make it a stronger institution for the future years and for the university itself. Now, I want to end simply by saying something that I said at the beginning. I consider myself very fortunate to be an economist. You'll be able to take the tools that we teach in the classroom and bring them to institutions, provide more educational opportunities for more students. I've also had the pleasure of working with teams that have helped create jobs. Okay. The essence is, and why every, I think, economist that I know is in the business, is to try to improve people's lives. Higher education is that profession that does it better than anything else. Thank you very much, everyone.
And Michael, we thank you very much. Very well done. You have a good stage presence, by the way.